Shalom everyone, and today we're going to study Parashat VaYikra, which is the beginning of the book of Leviticus, the book of VaYikra, that's the name of the book. Chapter 1, verse 1 in the book of VaYikra, Leviticus. Now, as we starting Parashat VaYikra, we are basically going into a whole book, which is the next 10, 11 weeks, that will be busy with all the temple worship and the study of the temple worship in the desert, which is basically irrelevant for all of us, since we are not into the temple worship anymore. And instead of that, we have prayers, we have all kinds of other stuff. Why is it that we need to read the next 11 or 10 weeks just about the sacrifices and more offerings about the Kohanim? And the name in English is the book of Leviticus, about the Levites. And the Kohanim, the priests, were also Levites. So it's about the work of the Levites. So if I'm not a Levite, what's in it for me? And the message is very important because we have to see it in the context of the whole 5 books of Moses. So if we consider one cycle of a year, 12, this year, 13 months, one cycle from Rosh Hashanah till Rosh Hashanah, a cycle like this is like giving us a lifetime. It's a full incarnation with all the possible corrections, tikkunim, that we supposed to face in a lifetime, but we can condense it into 1 year cycle, which means theoretically, a human being can complete his life mission in 1 year because we have the whole set of tikkunim we can deal with in 1 year. So, however, since we are not usually, most of us cannot do it in 1 year, so we get another cycle. So it's like a training. Everybody knows that if you want to improve any kind of skills, if it's medicine or it is cooking or any other professional aspect, the issue of repetition till you know your turf, till you understand the mission, till you understand the job, becoming a professional needs a lot of repetitions. So all of these cycles are basically our exercise system or background in order to become the people we are all supposed to become. And therefore, in the book of Genesis, which starts every year all over again, in the book of Genesis, we are dealing about establishing inside ourselves all of those traits, skills that basically without them, we are not really human. We are being controlled by our instincts, by urges, by all the emotion and stuff like this that make us like naked apes. If we would like to elevate to a higher dimension, we need to study the book of Genesis, and by the study of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, and the tribes, we learn basically all the skills that are supposed to prepare us, and every year all over again, because every year we have a better way to upgrade ourselves, like a spiral, into, and I said it many times, in order, and we understand better each concept, the concept of Abraham, chesed, giving and loving and being kind and stuff like this, the concept of judgment, which represented by Isaac and so on and so forth. Then comes the Exodus, which means every human being must take upon himself the duty, the commitment to get out from slavery, which means being a slave to and a victim to circumstances, to the way you're born, everything in your life, into taking charge and basically declare independence and liberty and take responsibility for that. And that is being done on that part of the year that we read the book of Exodus. So now what's the purpose? What in that cycle of the book of Leviticus, the book of VaYikra? This is the question. And we are going to read the book of VaYikra from this week all the way till the end of the counting of the Omer, till Mount Sinai Revelation, which is the holiday of Shavuot, 50th day after Passover. That's when this is the time period of the year that we read the book of VaYikra. So now the question is, what is our mission every year during this time period? And how can we, what are the tools given to us in order to achieve that mission so we can feel by the end of this period that we read the book of VaYikra, that we got the opportunity and we did the best out of it, of those opportunities and tools that we were given. So the word and the code of this is basically the first word of the reading, and it's also the name of the book, VaYikra. Now, if you want to translate it into English, VaYikra, it's almost impossible to translate it. It's like, if you want to translate it, it's and, A-N-D, he, with parentheses, called. And he called. Who called? You know, if you start an essay like this in school, that's disqualified immediately because you don't start an essay with a verb, and he called. Okay, where the word he does not even appear. In Hebrew, you can do that. And he called to Moses. That's verse 1. That's the beginning of the book of Leviticus. So, and he called VaYikra el Moshe, and he called Moses. Vaydaber Hashem elav, and God spoke to Moses from Ohel Moed, from the tent of the gathering, saying, that's a verse. And that's the beginning of the whole book. So now the question is, what has that to tell us? And you know, the simplest, if you really want to know what's the simplest, and you need to know the simplest meaning for it, you go to Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the greatest commentator ever, that lived in France of the 11th century. And he says, because Rashi did not lived in a time period that Kabbalah was not a study that was even prevalent, it was in the secret. It looks like Rashi had an access to the Zohar, though the Zohar was totally hidden and nobody was allowed to speak about. And Rashi is basically making a commentary that covers all 4 levels of understanding of the Torah, but in a very, very sophisticated way that looks very simplistic. So even a child can study his commentary. And therefore, children in Jewish schools from the age of 3, for the last 1,000 years, we're studying Rashi in Hebrew, okay? So if you went to any Jewish community around the world, you could talk to everyone about Rashi's, not just about the Torah, but also about Rashi's commentary. And Rashi is saying something very, very beautiful. VaYikra el Moshe, Rashi says, and he called Moses, Lechol dibrot ulechol amirot, all sayings and all speeches, ulechol tzivuim, and all commandments, kadma kriya, first there was a calling. And a calling, the word calling, kriya, the root, kuf reish aleph, likro, kara, vayikra, so on, which is the shoresh of the word vayikra. Kriya is a calling. It's always coming leshon chiba. What's leshon chiba? it's coming from love and affection. לשון שמלאכי השרת משתמשים בו. This is the language. This is the grammar that the angels use in order to talk to each other. That it says in the book of VaYikra, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 3, VaYikra ze el ze. When we use that verse in the Kedusha, in the repetition of Tfilat Amidah, the silent prayer, and we say, and the angels are calling each other, VaYikra ze el ze, they call each other with love. Ve'amar kadosh, 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 and they say, holy, holy, holy. Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Angels, we're talking about Malachei Asharet, those kind of angels of the high, they cannot deliver to each other anything but love and compassion and affection and light. Okay, so when we say, Rashi is saying, every communication that is coming from God, that is expressed as a revelation in the 5 books of Moses and also in other places, it always starts from the root of Kuf Reish Aleph, Kara, which means it's coming from love. Now, there's another thing about it that the Ohev Israel, the Opti Rabbi, says it's also when, how do you know it's love? When you speak with love to somebody else, there are 2 conditions that it's real, true love. One, that you really come from the intention of loving kindness and the desire to serve and to help and to have the other person you're speaking to feel the light. That's one thing. The other thing is that if you really care for the other person, you make all effort possible that the message you deliver will be received through his vessel, which means you can share something very loving with somebody else, but if you don't really love that person, you have no sense of that person's way of thinking. There's no sensitivity. And therefore, maybe it's coming from you as love, but they have no idea what you're talking about. They have no idea how to perceive your calling, which means if it is love, it means that you have to basically, if we are talking about somebody of high, we talk about God, we talk about the angels, that wants to share, to call, and to give love to somebody of low, which is us, human beings. It has to be basically concentrated and minimized to a level that we can understand, perceive, and get without being overwhelmed. So we understand that loving has 2 aspects. It's about the intention, and if the intention is really loving, it has to be about minimizing or sensitivity, that all your intention has to be fit to the vessel of the person that you are approaching to. Okay, and all of that is included in the verb VaYikra, Kara, and he called. And that's very important. Okay, however, we have also, the same thing, VaYikra, has another aspect, has another dimension, which means we know that everything that is great and good has an aspect of the dark side. Otherwise, there won't be any free will. So when we are talking about sensitivity and love, you can approach to someone with love and a smile and so on, but you have an agenda. And it's all with the purpose of manipulating the other person. Of course, you don't have an intention of love. You don't have an intention to make the other person feel good for his own good, but you're trying basically to manipulate and to make them feel good in order to be able to make them do something that you really need for your own interest, nothing for their interest. Same thing in the level of prophecy. When we're talking about prophets, and there were prophets of the nations of the world that connected to the dark side, we're talking about all kinds of people that deal with connecting to the metaphysical aspect, but they are not connecting from the light side, but they are connecting from the dark side. And how can we tell the difference? We'll see later on. But we know, for instance, when we're talking about who was the greatest prophets of the light side, we're talking about Moses. Who is the greatest prophet of the dark side? That was his counterpart, which is Bilam. And what does it say about Bilam? If you go to the book of Numbers, chapter 23, verse 4, and you go to the Hebrew text, it says, VaYikra Elohim el Bilam. The word is VaYikra, not VaYikra, with an aleph at the end, but VaYikra without an aleph. The same word exactly with just one letter missing. And what's VaYikra? VaYikra, then the Zohar explains, VaYikra, it's a totally different thing. You just, the moment the letter aleph is gone, that the letter aleph is the symbol of the creator, because aleph in Hebrew is from the word aluf, a general. But we're talking about alufo shel olam, the general of the universe, the general of the creation. That's hidden in the letter aleph. Aleph is also the same letters the sages teach us of Pele, wonder. Why wonder? Because the general of the universe, the leader of the universe, the creator himself, he is a wonder because our brain cannot perceive, understand his intentions because you cannot understand the endless. Okay? The moment you understand it, you didn't. Because our mind, our logic is finite and we cannot understand the infinite. What we can is trying to get closer to it by proximity and by the mere idea. The only way we can really connect to God's light is by doing our best to transform ourselves to be in affinity with Him. And that is basically the message of the whole book of VaYikra. Let us simply see how the Zohar takes us into that journey of what I just said and I did not explain. Okay? And if you read the Zohar of this parasha, there's an amazing article. There are some amazing articles about the game of the letters of the word VaYikra. And we won't go into it, but the word VaYikra, it means, and he called, and as Rashi explained to us, it's calling with a lot of love and affection, which means this is the way God is calling us, and we'll see it again and again in the Zohar. The calling never dies because God is beyond time, and his calling is there every day, every second. If we're reading the book of Exodus or the book of Genesis or the book of Leviticus, or it's a holiday or it's a weekday, it's a dark ages, it's the light ages, it's the age of the Messiah, does not matter. The call from the Creator is always the same. What makes it special, that calling is coming down through the Sephirot, the shining illuminations, so each one of us can get his call in his level till he wakes up and starts to act upon it the way the Zohar of Parashat VaYikra teaches us. So let us see the stages. So as the Zohar says, when the Zohar is trying to explain the word VaYikra, which we have also another symbol in it, the letter in the Torah itself, there are 3 sizes for the letters. The way the Torah is being written, the structure, the physical structure, the visible structure, there are many, many laws written in all over of how do you write the Torah. Now, in the laws of the Torah, there's also the size of the letters. There are 3 sizes to the letters of the Torah: small, medium, and large. Most of the Torah, like more than 99.9% of the letters in the Torah are written in the medium size. Sometimes you have small size, sometimes you have large size. The small size, the Zohar explains to us, is when it's connecting to Malchut, which means basically to minimize and to bring down and to concentrate in a way that it leads into the physical world. And that's why the word VaYikra, which has this extra letter Aleph, that without that Aleph, it's a prophecy that is coming from the dark side, okay? From the dark side. And we know in history, there were a lot of false prophets, and false prophet does not mean they are lying. It means that they get their energy and power, like Bilam, from the dark side. How can you get energy from the dark side? We know people can be messengers of the dark side, and we all have those moments that we are messengers of the dark side. Let's say when it says that anger is like idol worshiping. When a person is angry, he has a false feeling of extra powers. Okay, he screams, he yells, he's upset, his adrenaline level are higher, he's more charged with energy. Where is this energy coming from? From the light side? No, it's not. It's a destructive energy. This energy is like inflammatory. It's a flame of energy, of adrenaline and so on, fire, but it is self-consuming. We know that people full with anger, they have a very strong tendency to create inflammations physically in their bodies. And the most famous of them all is coronary disease, heart issues. Heart issues are directly connected to anger issues. And heart issues, most of them are starting from inflammation in the arteries that block the arteries. And that's what one of the most common disease that kills people around the world, okay? And what all the sages are teaching us, that anger is idol worshiping, because you have some powers, you have some certainty, you have a sense of a force that you don't have without the anger. You have a sense of achievement. If I was not angry, I wouldn't be able to achieve what I did achieve. A lot of people, and that's why wars are based of hatred and rage and anger. And we know it gives people a false sense of power. The result is destruction, self-destructive, and it basically goes spread around the world. The moment you become a messenger of anger, you get more power, but this power is very destructive for you. Okay, so when we add that Aleph, it means we have over here the light of the Creator himself, but it is coming down in the level that we humans can tolerate without being overwhelmed. Now, to come to what the Zohar is saying about it, if we understand that what I just read, what I just spoke about, it's the Zohar is explaining that if you have the Zohar of Parashat VaYikra in Perush HaSulam, that's verse number 3. Okay? And then in number 7, here's something very special. Tachazei, come and see. Kat salik ananan mashkena v'shara aloi. as the cloud, and we spoke a lot about the cloud, that cloud that dwelled upon the camp on the mountain and so on, the cloud, which is a cloud basically like in computers. You can't see the cloud. You know, somebody is walking in the cloud. Can you see that cloud? Talking about computer language. No, you cannot see it. However, when you're connected to the cloud, you're connected to almost unlimited amount of information. And also that information is empowering. It can give you the tools you need in order to achieve stuff in your work. The same thing, the spiritual cloud that the Torah is talking about is the cloud that turns our brain from just a simple human limited brain into a brain that is connected to the cloud, which means you are connected to the whole, to the creation, to the creator, to the purpose, and to the wisdom that a human mind cannot hold for itself, the same way that a regular computer or smartphone cannot contain too much information. And the information we need in order to operate today in our society is much bigger than a computer can hold. That's why you need to go to the cloud in order to be functional. Same thing in the spiritual world, which is amazing how today we have examples like this. A human being by himself is incapable of really dealing with all the challenges of everyday's life. How do you deal with everyday's life challenges? You need to tap into the cloud. How do you do that? So we go back. When the cloud came and dwelt upon the tabernacle, all the vessels or all the tools of the Mishkan, which is the upper temple, they were all in that cloud, which means, first of all, the tabernacle below in the physical layer was structured in affinity with the tabernacle above. It was a mean of communication. So basically humanity through the tabernacle and later on through the temple in Jerusalem, humanity, not just the Jewish people, humanity could tap into the cloud. Now, that's why the sages are saying many times in the Talmud, if the other nations knew how much the temple is important for them, they will send armies to protect the temple in Jerusalem so nobody will ever destroy it. However, they didn't understand that. And the Jewish people did not use it properly. That's why it has been destroyed. Okay? So the same is right about the tabernacle. So why do we have to talk so much about the tabernacle? Because if we are talking about the calling of every human being, the calling is to be in a level that we can connect daily, every hour, hourly, to God's calling. What's God calling? The calling that we all as human beings, we are basically bipolars. What does it mean? Every human being has a mundane, physical aspect, the body, the needs of the body. You have to have a home, a physical home. You need to establish a physical family. All of that stuff, you need to have a salary. You need to have income. In our society, you need to feed yourself. But you need to be able to connect all of these activities in the physical realm with the cloud in the metaphysical realm. Why? Because if you do not do that, it will be like a body without a soul. Whatever you're going to do, whatever you're going to achieve will be somehow meaningless because it is not connected to the cloud. So therefore, the Zohar continues. Makti, what does it say? ולא יכול משה לבוא אלוהי אל מועד, כי שכן עליו הענן. And it says that Moses could not come into the tabernacle because the cloud rested upon it. But it says also, Vayavo Moshe betochanan, and Moses came on Mount Sinai into the cloud. Vayi Moshe bahar 40 yom v'arba'im laila, and Moses stayed over there twice for 40 days and 40 nights. If Moshe lahava yachila ala lemashkena, amay hava yati beturah kol inun 40 yomin. If Moses could not get into the cloud in the tabernacle, how come he could get into it when it was on Mount Sinai? And the answer is, the Zohar says, that's verse number 8. There are two clouds. One is the cloud that Moses got into and stayed there for 40 days and 40 nights. This cloud is a cloud of Malchut, which means that layer, frequency, dimension of the physical world. Okay, when it is transformed into a spiritual dimension, which means we have to remember again, in many religions, in order to become a spiritual person, you need to disassociate totally from your physical aspect. Okay? But when we study the Torah, that aspect does not appear over there. We are not supposed to disassociate the physical aspect. We have to transform and sanctify physicality. Okay? We are not preventing ourselves from drinking wine, like in some religions. But when we drink wine, we use it in order to make it a vessel for holiness. And that's why when we drink the wine in spiritual services in Jewish tradition, we call it kiddush, sanctifying. Okay? That's an example. The whole thing. We do not see sex as something dirty. Sex has to be dealt with a lot of spirituality and state of mind of love and connection and being there for somebody else, and to do it in a certain way, again, so it becomes becomes holy. Okay? That's why wedding ceremony is called kiddushin, to sanctify, to make it holy, which means otherwise, if it's just done like animals do it, just because they need to reappropriate, or they simply had to manifest their desires of their bodies and hormones, stuff like this, this is just animalistic, and it can turn into terrible aspects. But when you sanctify it, okay, that's another issue. So we are not here as human beings, human souls into physical bodies in order to disassociate from the physicality, but we're here in order to turn the physicality into a frequency of holiness that will basically could be compatible with the cloud. And when it is compatible with the cloud, we can earn the most high of all high, which is that light, love, good fortune, peace, and whatever is needed can flow from the upper worlds into our every physical aspect. The tabernacle story is just the intermediate. This is just the formula that how physicality can interact with the spirituality and become a vessel for spirituality and not just something with life of its own. Okay? Why is that extremely important? Let's see. Let's read another aspect of it. The Zohar continues in this article where I'm reading from the Zohar about the game of the letters and the power of every letter, and now the interconnections between the different letters of the word VaYikra. And it says that finally, if you reassemble the letters of the word VaYikra, there was a code. There was a codified message in the word VaYikra. if you realign the letters and you put the most important of them all in the first place, the Aleph, as we said, the Aleph, instead of being the last one, put in the first one. Why do you have to hide it? Let us see. You get the word Okir. Okay? Okir. Okir is taken from the book of Isaiah, chapter 13, verse 12. And that verse says, Okir enosh mipaz, ve'adam miketem ofir. God says that basically the whole purpose of human existence is that a human being will be precious than gold, precious than the highest quality of gold. Okay, so here God is basically talking about every human being has the potential, and that's his calling, to become precious and holy, more than gold, more than any precious metal or gem. Okay, and that was the meaning behind the word VaYikra. It really meant a calling to Moses. Here Moses achieved that level of being so holy and so spiritual and so uplifted, because he just established, manifested in physicality what every human being is supposed to achieve. Okay? And that voice is calling among the chariots. The Zohar said, I'm reading in verse 17 in the Zohar VaYikra. And verse 18, it says, Ashrei chelko shel Moshe. Praiseworthy is Moses, that he reached that level. Sherakoz, he saw the callings, he saw the angels calling to each other, and he saw that the whole message came for us, for humans, all humans. He saw all of it, but one thing he did not see. He did not see the word Okir. I will cherish like the most precious thing. That's the same word VaYikra when the Aleph goes to the beginning. Almost the same. Okay, but the same letters of VaYikra. Moses did not see that. He saw only VaYikra. Why? Because Ein modi'im shivcho shel adam befanav. You never tell the person's qualities, high qualities in his face. Why? You do not want to embarrass him, and you do not want to hurt him, because if he doesn't have the ability to contain that blessing. And God does not want Moses to realize that basically God is calling him, but it's really cherishing him, being able to make that connection between the physical realm and the spiritual godly realm, which are basically one. However, we humans need to reveal that in order to have ownership over that. As we studied it many, many times, especially last week's study of Parashat Pekudei, the Zohar is saying, yes, everything that we experience and go and own and have and around us and within us, it's all coming from the endless light. However, in order to enjoy that, because we are created in the image of the Creator, we need to achieve ownership over that light by overcoming the challenges that our physical body and our negativities present us. And therefore, we see over here that every human being has a godly calling. Every human being needs to manifest that godly calling, because if he does not, or she does not manifest it, it's like we're missing the point. Okay? And how is that connected? It's very important to understand. In order to be able to become that precious, cherished human being that each one of us is supposed to become, we need, according to the teachings of Rabbi Ashlag, the founder of modern Kabbalah movement, is To make it simple, we have to transform the desire to receive for the self alone into the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. And we can see by our minds, by our analytic minds, says Rabbi Ashlag, that as long as we stay selfish, we can see that as long as we stay selfish, as individuals, as communities, as countries, humanity will go into frying in a deep frying pan. Torture, disaster after disaster. As long as we do not really take in and commit for our calling, and our calling is not, as especially it came out and manifested like never before in the history of humanity. We were not here to consume. We're not here to just expand our selfishness, which we basically created a society, a civilization, at least when we're talking about the leading civilization of Earth in the last few decades, talking especially from the end of World War II. And that came into more and more into one thing: me, and only me. How do I achieve more pleasure for myself with the minimum of sharing with others? Okay, the fastest growing religion around the world in the last few decades is hedonism, narcissism, and egotism. It's all about that. The problem with that, this is going so much away from the real calling of every human being. And the result is that people, instead of becoming happier, more loving, more affectionate, we became maybe more sensitive to morals and ethics, but we became more selfish. And as we became more selfish, we became more miserable, more upset, more angry creatures. Why? Because as long as we are committed only for our self-fulfillment, and look what happened. We had a whole series of generations. We're talking about 3-4 generations already that are busy what? In making a living, having comfortable life, making money, spending the money, living a luxurious life like never, ever before in the history of humanity. Yeah, there were cultures and civilizations that were into it, but it was only a very small fraction of the society. Most of society were slaves serving the elite. Now, even the slaves were busy running after pleasure daily. And now there's a little catch into it. We human beings, we were created to achieve pleasure. We are created to experience pleasure. Don't have a mistake about it. Pleasure from everything that is around us. We are here, we are planned for that. We are designed for that. However, there's one little problem, as Rabbi Ashlag simplifies it. The moment we are selfish, and that moment, we cannot be a vessel for God's light. Why? The law of affinity says the similarities attract, which means if you want to connect to the cloud that the Zohar is talking about, you want to feel real, authentic, true, lasting love from above, and feel it and share it with your peers, with your community, with your family, you need to have one thing: transform selfishness into altruism. Without it, forget it. And because of that, Rabbi Ashlag prophesizes as a wise person, it's not a prophecy, it's wisdom. Okay? I'm talking about 90 years ago, in the early 30s of the 20th century, and later on in the 50s, The problem is that humanity is getting more and more tools of mass destruction. We are becoming more and more dangerous to ourselves and to each other by all of that, how would I say? It's a bliss that became a curse. Technology, the society with plenty of whatever you want. And just to remember that, as a society today, okay, like never before, we can eliminate poverty, hunger, diseases, plagues, like never before. But we look around and we see that we have the technology to do that, but people's selfishness is on the way, in the way. And instead of having a blossoming society with equality like never before, we have a world full of ugly stuff. And when it happened in Syria or in Vietnam before, or in let's say Rwanda, as long as we had our own comfort, I'm talking about people lived in other countries, as long as we had our own comfort and we could have our vacations on time, we could go to the movies, we can buy, cheap ice cream or other stuff or popcorn and have nice, we didn't bother that much. Unless like in the 30s of the 20th century, we realized that if we are not going to wake up, we are going to lose all of that. And why is it? It's not because of anything but selfishness of everybody's sides. Going for a war and taking what doesn't belong to you, this is out of selfishness. But you can't just blame one person. You have to look at yourself because you cannot do it for somebody else. And you have to have that commitment in your own society of carelessness, about altruism. What achieved freedom like never before and liberty and access to resources like never before in the last almost 100 years, okay, was because millions of people were willing to give their lives just for their countries and their societies. And there were people who were giving their lives away. Without those millions of people that went to fight against tyranny and dictatorships and evil, we would not have such a great life. And what was our appreciation? Instead of following the altruism of these people, we had, you look in America, for instance, Memorial Day. I was in shock when I saw Memorial Day sales. What? It's like, how dare you? Turn a Memorial Day for people who gave their lives into a celebration of shopping and enjoying and indulging your own body only. It's like, this is exactly the problem we have right now. And therefore we will never, as humanity, we will never have real, true rest, not only on the individual level, because when a person is busy developing his individuality and narcissism, he will lose more and more his ability to create love between men and women, between parents and children, among community members, in a state, among states. All of it is coming for one problem, little tiny problem: egotism, narcissism. It's all about me. If I don't get what I want, then I can kill, I can destroy, I can steal, I can cheat. No morals, no values anymore that are bigger than your life. And if you're not committed to these biblical values, Rabbi Ashlag says, we are going to be punished. No, we don't need God to punish us. We're just simply punishing ourselves. Because the moment we create that frequency of narcissism, egotism, and selfishness, we are disconnected from the cloud. And then we see everything from a very narrow view. You can see people that are leaders, that are scholars, professors. They run big institutions of policies and stuff like this. And you listen to their words and you say, how could somebody be so dumb? They're not dumb. They're simply selfish. And when somebody is busy being selfish, the next thing is because you're dumb, you're selfish, you're blocked. You cannot connect to the cloud, and whatever you see is from a very small, tiny outlook, and you can't see the big picture. You can't understand the big picture. Why? You have no need. You get your salary anyway. Okay. So why do you need to become a better person? And we have to understand, a selfish person can never become a real good professional. Never. Why? He is disconnected from the cloud. To really be a talented scholar or professional, it doesn't matter if you're a politician or you are a doctor or whatever profession you have. If you are not connected to the cloud, you cannot bring ideas from out of the box. You cannot really bring solutions from outside the box. And if you cannot, well, who cares about your profession or your experience and your profession and your abilities? You don't have abilities, because solving problems, that's what being a professional is about. And using the same mind, the same logic that got you into the problem cannot get you out of it, said Einstein. Okay? The only way we can get out of the box is when we really commit to holiness. The whole book of VaYikra is the next step. From now on, the whole season that culminates in the holiday of Shavuot, Mount Sinai Revelation, is about purifying ourselves, about how do you reach that frequency of loving others as we love ourselves. Why are we doing that? Not because it is nice. It's because we have no other choice. Because this rule in the universe is so important that without it, we'll continue to get all the gifts that God is giving us. And we're going to use those tools to destroy ourselves and our surroundings. And that's why you see people that's supposed to be so happy. Never before in history, people's safety on the level of housing, the level of other different levels of security, nutritional security. We've never been so fortunate. And what do we do with that? Jealousy, stealing, no honesty, no integrity. And more than that, will never be enough. And therefore we see the plague of depression, the plague of all kinds of negative attitude towards life, being a victim, and all of that just because of our selfishness. The healing for all of that, the healing for the individual psychological crisis that the West is experiencing, or what we say, the civilization of a plenty, because it's not just the West. We're talking about all of those places all over the planet that are fortunate to have so much food and housing and everything else, okay? And they're still not happy. Why? It's a disease of selfishness. Okay, so therefore, when the Zohar continues talking about all the offerings that the temple is, that we deal with, all of this book of Leviticus, why do we have to repeat it again and again and again, parasha after parasha? And the answer is that the Zohar is saying, I'm jumping right now, I'm skipping right now to verse 50 in the Zohar Sulam. Come and see, או באותו יום שנשתכלל בית המשכן, on that day that the tabernacle, which is basically Mishkan in Hebrew, Mishkan means the dwelling place of the Holy Spirit. That's what Mishkan means, dwelling place. I don't know what tabernacle means in Latin, but my Latin is not that good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu הקדים ושרה בו. The Holy, blessed be He, Zeranpin, dwelled in the tabernacle. Miyad VaYikra el Moshe, and the result is immediately VaYikra el Moshe, and he called Moses. He called him, he cherished him. And what does that mean? There's another explanation. שהודיע לו, he told Moses, שעתידים ישראל לחטוא לפניו, the Israelites are going to sin. And because of that, the tabernacle is going to be destroyed. So the tabernacle has been destroyed once in Shiloh. In Shiloh, the tabernacle was there over 300 years in Shiloh, which is north of Jerusalem. Okay, then it was destroyed by the Philistines. Then it was destroyed second time when we talk about the destruction of the first temple, and then the second temple. And all of it is just because of the sins. What does it mean, sin? People sin only because they do not commit to transform their selfishness, okay, and achieve purity. What is purity? How can we get pure? When it says in the book of Leviticus, in VaYikra, Parashat Kedoshim, love others as you love yourself. That's in the book of Leviticus, okay? And it says, what are these issues of the sacrifice or offerings when the Israelites and the rest of the world will make mistakes and fall? They have a tool that is called repentance, that is called Teshuva, that is called, and therefore, the Mishkan was a tool of transforming the negativities that we humans are very good in creating and transforming ourselves so we can reconnect to the cloud. And he says, the healing, the remedy for our sins, because we humans, and we make sins, we fall. That's normal. What's not normal is not to try and heal that falling. And therefore it says, Adam ki akriv mikem korban Hashem. Adam, because we are all from Adam, that will bring an offering to Hashem. These offerings, they protect us from everything. So, verse 51, and we'll finish with that. Rabbi Chizkiah היה מצוי לפני רבי שמעון. רבי חזקיה was there with רבי שמעון. אמר לו, זה שנקרא קורבן. Why it's called קורבן? היה צריך להיקרא קירוב. קורבן means, usually people translate that word in modern Hebrew into sacrifice and victim, which means, what does it mean I have to give up my selfishness? So that means that I have to sacrifice my money, my life to somebody else, to my spouse, to my children, to my community. The moment it's coming from the place of sacrifice or from a place of being a victim, I'm a victim because I never had time for myself. I always had to do it for others. The moment you do it for that place, you are not sanctifying anything. You're just getting deeper and deeper into self-pity. That's called being a victim, okay? A victim, the more victim you become, the worse you feel, the less healthy you are. And he says, no, do not see it as sacrifice or victim. You have to see it from the word karov. היה צריך להיקרא קירוב, you should call it קירוב. Remember, it's the same shoresh, kuf reish bet. You can see it as a sacrifice, which means I gave it away with getting nothing for it, no appreciation, nothing. No, it should be called keruv, karov, or krevut, getting closer, למה נקרא קורבן? אמר לו הידוע אצל החברים, אשר קורבן. So the word קורבן means getting closer to the 50th gate. Nun is getting closer to the holy Sefirot, which means the healing in our lives. It's not that when I give to the people around me, it's not a sacrifice. It's getting closer to God. This is the basic of love others as you love yourself. What's the next words in the Torah? I am God. Why do I care for others? Why do I try to be less selfish? Because by doing that, by giving my money, my time, my energy, by trying to become the best professional, by giving a service to my country as a politician, or as a clerk, or a plumber, or a professor, or whatever, a specialist in anything or whatever job I have, I am not sacrificing anything. I am getting closer to God. I'm getting connected to the cloud, and the cloud will give me the protection, the knowledge, the wisdom, the power, the healing. When it will give it to me? When I become in affinity with it. And that's when I basically give up my selfishness, my narcissism. And that's not a sacrifice. This is getting closer to the light. So when we give and we think that we sacrificed, we are in the wrong direction, totally wrong direction. Oh, the direction towards anger and frustration and giving up. And you see so many times people say, I gave up my life. You know, I was not supposed to. What did I get out of it? Nothing. No respect, no thank you, whatever. I'm basically supposed to not give to it. I'm supposed to take care of it just about myself. Wrong. This is the dark side. And it doesn't matter. It's not going to help you. The more secluded you become, the more you stay away from people so you won't get hurt. The more you accumulate your fortune just for yourself and have mentions just for yourself so nobody touches your stuff, the more far away you become from the cloud. And that means, doesn't matter how much you accumulate for yourself, how much you consume, food, anything of richness and pleasure, you'll always stay depressed, because what depresses you? Your selfishness. And that's the message for humanity. And as long as we as humanity want to take that responsibility, we won't find inner happiness, and we'll see in the big picture, societies are basically a accumulation of individuals. When you have a society that is made of a majority of selfish individuals, how would that society behave? In a terrible way, and get itself into more troubles again and again. So you see it as more into wars that people really kill each other and make horrible stuff to each other, or they just hurt each other in a society that has no justice, no compassion, no love, and full of suffering and depression and negativity. Our calling is in this parashat VaYikra. Every human being is supposed to be cherished like more than gold, like any gem. But in order to reveal that gem, we need to commit to transform our selfishness into altruism and true love, not sacrificing, getting closer to the Creator, to the cloud, to the light of God, and then be that light and share it with others. Thank you so much, and good luck to all of us.